This is the big day, the moment you've been waiting for, the big prediction. What will the silver price, what will the gold price be in March of 2025? We're fortunate to be joined today by Mr. Don Wedding. He's a data scientist, a statistician. It's a real honor that he's joining us because if you remember, about a month ago, we put out an initial video where we asked you for your gold and silver price predictions for next year, March of 2025. Don has worked tirelessly compiling all the data, applying data science, applying statistical analysis to this data. And today, we're going to give you the big prediction. Now, this will be based on the wisdom of the crowd methodology. Don will explain a little bit about that to you. Don, welcome to Ron's Basement.
It's good to be back, Ron.
Well, it's a big honor. On behalf of all the basement dwellers, I want to say thank you to you for all the work that you put into this price prediction, which we will reveal here in just a few minutes for everybody. But I know you put a lot of work in. You've got a very impressive background. Just so everybody knows who we're talking to, Don, I want to go out to your website real quickly. Don owns a company called DKW Analytics, data science consulting. It's a consulting firm with expertise in all areas of data science, and us basement dwellers love data science, ranging from traditional statistical analysis to more advanced techniques, including machine learning and artificial intelligence. And let me scroll down. I also want to add that Don teaches statistics, and you can correct me if I misspoke on that, Don. But Don teaches statistics at Northwestern University, which we all know is one of the more prestigious and higher quality higher education institutions in our country. Don, tell us a little bit about this method, I guess, as we get started. We're going to tell people what data science is saying about what the gold and silver price could be a year from now. But I'm going to be quiet and let you tell people what this wisdom of the crowd methodology, how that works.
Okay, well, there you go. The wisdom of the crowd is actually a technique that's widely used, politics, marketing, many different fields. And the backstory was about 100 years ago, a famous statistician named Sir Francis Galton. There was a county fair, and everyone had to guess the weight of a cow, and the one who got closest would be win the cow. And after, there was like 800 people there, and their predictions were such that they were all over the map. And so when the contest was over, Sir Francis Galton, the statistician, liked numbers, so he averaged everybody up just for fun, and he found out that the cow weighed something like 1,200 pounds or 1,204 pounds, and the average of everybody was like 1,199 pounds or something in that neighborhood. So they were only off by a couple of pounds. So even though everybody was off by a lot, the average was only off by a fraction. And he began to study this, and he realized that you have an equal probability of getting it high or low. And if you get enough predictions, you can possibly accurately predict something like this. Now, looking at a cow is one thing because you get to see the cow. Now, what I was interested in is, can this be used to predict a future event? This is going to be a lot more tricky. Looking at a cow is one thing, but trying to predict the price of silver is who knows? I mean, we're rolling the dice here, Ron.
Well, Don, right, but we may as well throw our prediction in based on data science, because as we both know, there's no shortage of silver price predictions as we look out into the coming year. So why don't we dig into the slides and tell people, show people kind of the data that you compiled.
You might want to go to the
I'll go back to slide number 2 here. Okay.
I think you should really go to slide number 1, because I think that quote by Yogi Berra is a good one. It's Yogi Berra, the baseball player and manager. His famous quote was, "It's tough to make predictions, especially about the future."
Hold on, Don. That's why we have this, the Magic 8 Ball. So when we do the big announcement, because we are going to tell everyone what we think based on this scientific method, the silver and gold price, or what the science tells us, right? We aren't giving financial advice. Don't make any financial decisions based on anything that Don or I say. We're just telling you what the data science is telling us. But when we're done with that, we will then consult the magic 8 ball to see if our prediction will come true.
Yeah,
And
should you tell them that that's really where my logo came from, or is that?
yeah, that's where Don's logo for his company came from. And we're going to talk some about just your general thoughts and my general thoughts about what's going on in the silver and gold market, because today sure feels like April Fool's Day for anyone who's watching the gold price, unfortunately. But let's get back to these slides. And we'll go to slide number 1. I think you said you wanted to start with gold. Is that correct, Don?
That's correct. My reason being that most of the basement dwellers, myself included, I'm more interested in silver than I am in gold. Now, sure, I find gold interesting, but I really, I watch your show and a lot of the other silver people. It's just fascinating for me. So I thought it would be interesting to do start with gold, because people have less of an emotional investment in that. Now you'll see that I know that there's probably a lot more predictions now, but I stopped it at 326 people. The first, I grabbed everybody from Ron's basement and I took their predictions. So you can see I have 326 people made predictions. Of these, 270 of them made a gold prediction and 311 made a silver prediction. And it was all over the map. Also, right underneath, you see average people. And that was me walking around Cleveland. And anytime I went anywhere, ran a errand for my wife, or, anytime I had any interactions, spam caller, who knows what, I would ask them their prediction on gold and silver, because I wanted to use that as a baseline of people to see what an average person versus a Ron's basement person would say. So that's where we
But
start.
Don, I thought everybody out there was a basement dweller. I guess there are some, not right? Yeah.
Go figure, Ron. I'm hooked on the show, but but when I turn it on, my wife runs out of the room. So
Right. So does mine, by the way.
she just doesn't care. Okay. So of this, this is just what you're looking at here is the raw data, and you can see that it was all over the map, and some of the people really predicted some wild numbers. Now, like, for example, one person predicted a number of gold, predicting gold 1 year from now at 15 million. And this person wasn't just being silly. They had a bunch of rationale behind it. But I thought, okay, I get it. And maybe this person is correct. But in order to do this math correctly, I'm going to have to throw away the outliers. And an outlier is somebody who's massively different from the rest of the people. So I have some techniques, and I'm not going to crawl into the weeds about this, but there are techniques to getting rid of outliers. So I got rid of these outliers, and you can see that at this point, when that 15 million and a couple of other people were in the millions, those people were taking our average up to like 60,000, or if you look at it, 59,764. We don't want to be down at that point.
Hey, Don, Don, I have a question for you. I don't want to interrupt you, just so everybody understands what's going on. On that left-hand column, the bottom 3, you have the mean, and the mean is the average. Is that correct?
That is correct. I just add up everybody's prediction and I divide by the number of people. So, for example, average people, if I add up everybody's prediction and I divide by 50, I'm going to get $2,484, $2,484. Gotcha. Ron's basement, when I take everybody's prediction, add them up, divide by 270, I get $59,000. That's a big discrepancy there. You want me to go? The median is if I just sort them from big to little and I take the guy right in the middle. So half the people are above this number, half the people are below that number. And you can see the number is 2,300 for average people and 2,800 for basement dwellers. What you're hoping for is your mean and your median to be kind of close.
Yeah.
Finally, going down a little bit further, you can see here that the mode, that one is not used as often, but I found it interesting is that the one number that jumped up the most was $3,000, and that was
Hey,
both
Don. Hey,
average. Oh, go
Don.
ahead. Yes,
Don,
sir.
you forgot us basement dwellers. We aren't statisticians. I want to make sure I have this correct. The mode is the most repeated number. Is that correct?
Correct. The
Okay.
most common one.
The most
So,
common number. So 3,000 came up under both circumstances most frequently amongst both the average people and the basement dwellers. That's very interesting. In the median, I want to make sure everybody understands that as well. I'm going to ask you if the way I think about the median is correct. The median would be that if we had 101 people that had made predictions, the median would be the prediction number 51, the one that there's 50 lower and 50 higher. Is that accurate?
that is correct.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry I interrupted you.
No. I'm a teacher, so I like to just talk. So
Yeah.
you interrupt all you want, Ron. So we'll go to the next slide where I actually removed people. So there's no outliers here. And you can see that once we throw away the people with $1 million predictions, the numbers become a lot more similar. So
is this where the science comes in? The subjective, like your decades of expertise as a data scientist, as a statistician. Mm-hmm. Would you say this is where your expertise comes into play?
Yeah, I would imagine. I would say yes to that. Now, there's other people who do this for a living, and they would probably follow a similar technique. But it's at this point, it starts becoming more art than science because there's a lot of different techniques. And so you get a couple of people who do this for a living. Many of them would have very similar answers to this. Doesn't mean it's the right way. There's other approaches. You might get some different answers, but there's some standard techniques.
Yeah. Well, we believe in Don, so keep going, my friend.
Okay. So at this point, you can see these are the numbers. Now, if I start reading these numbers at this point, people's eyes are going to glaze over. So instead of us looking at these numbers right now, we'll come back to them. But let's just fast forward to. Good point. Go back one slide, please. I also decided to not just have average people in Ron's basement, but I combined the two as well. So that's these are the numbers as well. And let's take a quick visualization of this. So this box here is called a box and whisker plot, and it's a nice way of visualizing the data. And you can see that the range here goes from, I don't know, it's probably like the box in the middle is half the data, the middle half of the data. So
the yellow box represents the middle half of the data. Above it, the whisker above it would be the top 25%, and the whisker below it, as you call it, the dotted line whisker, would be the bottom 20. So that yellow box is 50% of the combined data, correct?
That's correct. The middle half.
Yeah.
And so this is sort of a good way of visualizing the data. That black line across the middle is the median. In other words, half of the data is above that line and half of the data below that line. And that number is $2,633. So $2,600 is the median. Now, we'll look at the numbers themselves in just a moment because if I start spouting off numbers, people's eyes are going to glaze over more so than probably now. So let's go to the next slide and take a look. So at this point, I decided to split Ron's basement, and they're the green box on the right, and the red box is on the left. And this is the gold prediction of average people versus Ron's basement. And what I found to be so interesting here is that the numbers seem to be relatively similar. I mean, obviously, Ron's basement has we study this stuff, so we think gold is undervalued, so we predict it's going to go up a little bit higher. But these numbers are relatively close to one another. And if we go to the next slide, we actually have everything all there. So you can see.
Yeah.
So
I want to remind everyone, coming up very soon is the official Ron and Don gold price. I hesitate to use the word prediction, but for lack of a better word, prediction that you are not allowed to make any financial decisions based upon. But we are going to come out here soon with the number.
Well, let's call that the guesstimate then. How about that,
okay.
Ron?
Yeah, that's right. No, that's right.
So you can see here we've got the the top guy is combining everybody, the average, the mean, 2,600, the median, 2,600. As a statistician or a data scientist, I love it when my mean and my median are very close to one another. That's usually a good
And
sign.
would you say that's the case when you combine the data, that mean and median are very close?
Yeah, those numbers are very similar to one another. If they were wildly different, I would say I've still got a lot of outliers here. But I like this. This is giving me a good feeling that
Yeah.
the
And one
the
one more
actual. Go
and one
ahead.
more quick question. That top combined data, that is without that's the filtered data. That's without the outliers in the data, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Everything
Okay.
that this is, the outliers are long gone at this point.
Gotcha.
So, and then of course we also can split this between average people and Ron's basement, and you can see that if we just split them down the little bit lower, the group below, you can see that the average people on the Joe average on the street 2,400, Ron's basement 2,700. So there seems to be about a $300 discrepancy here, but the numbers are in line with one another. So that's
Outstanding.
that. And you and I will come back to gold and silver predictions, what our guesstimate is in a minute. But let's take a quick look at silver, because I find silver to be
Okay. Well,
very
you don't want to do the big.
Oh,
How do you feel about us announcing gold now, and then we'll go through? Okay.
Sure,
Okay.
let's do that, Ron. This is your show, and I am here to serve.
Well, no, we owe you a big debt of gratitude with everything. So Don and I talked, and I know that you mentioned this. If we look at the combined data up top, the mean, which again is the average, was 2673. And again, that was after some data science was applied to this data by Don using his judgment and experience. And the median was 2633. And we agreed on as a prediction for the gold price based upon these data science techniques that on March 15th of 2025, we're going to go out on a limb and say that gold will be right in the middle, right between those two, $2,653. Should we consult the 8-ball, Don, to see how accurate we are?
Yes, please do that, Ron.
All right. Well, here, let's shake up the 8-ball. I've tried this before to show it on. You have to believe me what it says, and I have to turn it here.
No, we'll take your words for this, Ron.
Okay, so the 8-ball tells us that we should ask again later. So maybe we'll do that.
We'll do that at the end.
Yeah, we'll ask it again at the end. Let's move on to silver here, because you found some really interesting trends in terms of the silver predictions as well. Let me go to the next slide. And here you go. Unfiltered silver data.
And again, you can see that the maximum value for the average guy on the street, $75, which, that's not all, in my opinion, all that outrageous. But you get the Ron's basement people, and some of those people were as high as 42,000. Again, there are techniques to remove these outliers. And if anybody's curious about how I did it, please, feel free to email me. I'll give you all my thoughts on this. I'm happy to do it. So let's just skip to the next slide where we removed it. And you can see the numbers now become a little bit more in sync. But
yeah,
there's still, whereas gold, they were kind of close. Silver, there seems to be a disparity here where the average from a person on the street was $27, not much different than it is today. Yeah. Whereas a Ron basement person, the average was $51, which incidentally is very close to the all-time high that was reached in both 1980 and 2008 or 2007, thereabouts. But it hit 50. It seems like that's a magic number, and I thought it was really interesting that number jumped out at us.
So I think it's safe to say that the basement dweller community is very optimistic about the silver price, huh, Don?
That seems to be the case. And again, if you look at the bottom there, the mode, what I think is so interesting is that the most common prediction from a guy on the street was $30. And and a basement dweller, $30, and also the same number. I had bimodal, two different numbers popped up the most, and one was $30 and one was $50. But I thought that was very interesting that there was that number seems to be popping up a lot.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And I want to throw in too that $51 mean or average of the basement dwellers, which is the basically the all-time high in silver. That's the nominal price. If we adjust that 1980 high for inflation, and you're the statistician, Don, but I hear numbers that are always north of 150,
Mhm.
$160 per ounce in today's dollars. So who knows? Maybe next year will be interesting to see 1 year from now what those predictions look like.
That's that. Yeah, I've heard those numbers as well, but I don't have the inflation numbers at my fingertips.
Yeah.
But again, just as we did before, we've also combined them here. So we got a combination of both average people and basement dwellers. And let's rather than dwell on the numbers, let's go and do a quick visualization of the silver.
Okay. You know what? And while we do that, hold on a second, Don. I want to break in. Is it okay with you if
Sure.
I thank
Go
my channel sponsor, Pimbex, real quickly?
ahead.
Before we get to the official silver prediction, if you decide you want to get your hands on some silver or gold or platinum, now please do yourself a favor, check out Pimbex. Throw them into the mix when you're shopping online for bullion. I think you'll find what I found. They have the best prices, ultra competitive pricing, great service, great selection, and a company that you can trust, but you need to find that out for yourself. Do yourself a favor and check out Pimbex. All right, Don, let's go back to the silver here. There we go.
Okay. So again, this is the combination, and again, that silver box in the middle. I used silver and gold for this. That silver box in the middle is the middle half. We have a median of $40, so that seems to be the halfway point when we combine them, and then uh, the numbers go as low as 18 and as high as 112. But we're interested in that middle box there. And
Yep.
then, just as we did before, let's split this apart and by basement dwellers. Now, this is what I found so interesting. We could probably scroll up and look at the gold in a second, but you can see that whereas gold was really close, well, I would say really close, reasonably close between basement dwellers and guy on the street. Silver is considerably different here. The average guy on the left, it's very confined to a small range between around $40. Whereas if we look at the guy on the right, Ron's basement, these numbers are considerably higher.
We
So it
call
looks
that optimism here amongst the basement dweller community.
that is what I'm thinking too. Now, so this could be one of two things. One is we can agree that the people who watch Ron's basement we're probably silver junkies. We watch all of the shows that have, obviously, Ron, I watch your show first, but I watch
Yeah.
a lot of other ones too. I like watching it. It's fascinating for me. And so I'm always optimistic. Now, is that optimism causing a bias and making us wishful thinking? Or is this the fact that, when I was asking Joe Average on the street, I'd say, what's silver going to be? They say, well, what is it now? They don't even know what the price is. I had to
Yeah.
tell them what it was. And they're like, oh, 25, 26. They don't know. So
Yeah.
who knows? So it's going to be fascinating to see what happens this time next year.
And that's interesting you point that out because I know most people, you probably had to explain to them what silver was, although I'm joking. Most people know what silver is. But I don't think that the average person on the street understands a couple of the big fundamental factors that are driving the silver price. I don't want to sound mean when I say this, but they probably don't realize that silver. I mean, silver is the only metal that is like what basically in nominal terms half of its all-time high. Every other metal, you hear these statistics about silver. So I think and I guess why I'm saying this is it would make sense based on what you said that, yeah, the basement dweller community, they know the facts, whereas like potentially the average person on the street isn't quite as aware as to what's really going on in the silver market.
Yeah, so you're right. I don't think it's mean. It's just they don't care. Most people don't care about, like, for example, if you started talking to me about the price of nickel, I have no clue. So I just don't care. So this is what I think, and I would be willing to bet that if I only had 50 people in my sample, however, I'd be willing to bet if I had 1,000, that box and whisker plot on the left would still be the same. Most people do not care and they don't follow it. So that's a question: is which of them is going to be the more accurate? The person who follows it, but we are probably tainted by wishful thinking, whereas the guy on the left doesn't care, but they're also doing this from, they don't know much on the topic. So I'm going to be curious.
Yeah.
So, and of course, now we have here the numbers and the graph, and you can see that if we combine them, it's going to be about $48 is the mean. Median is 40, and the mode is 30. And you can see here on the left and right, the average person versus Ron's basement. There seems to be a big discrepancy there, $27. I told people, I go, look, the price right now is $25 at the time of my survey. And they're okay, 27. They didn't think it's going to go up that much. Whereas Ron's basement, it's going to be an all-time high. It's going to hit that all-time nominal high, not adjusted for inflation. So I guess the big reveal is, what do you think we should say as our silver prediction? And then we'll, of course, consult the magic 8-ball.
Yeah, I think you and I spoke about this last week when we first were analyzing the data, or you had analyzed it and were sharing it with me, that it feels like to me $41 for silver. That's the big prediction for March 15th of 2025. $41 when we look at kind of the median data and consider also the mean, which again, for everybody out there, is the average. And when you combine the data, the overall average is 48. The median comes in at 40, and it felt right to me, $41 for March 15th of 2025. What do you think, Don?
I think $41. I would be tickled pink at $41.
Yeah. And I think that's within the realm of possibility. Actually, I think both of these, the gold prediction, 2,653, based on where we are now, based on the fundamental factors supporting the gold market, that seems very reasonable. And I think $41 for silver, I don't think that feels out of the question, or like, $85. Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? But maybe not, right? But $41 for a silver price, basically 11 and a half months from now, to me feels very, very doable. And I think even this, from a fundamental perspective, right? And we could talk about that for hours, the fundamental supply demand dynamics, the kind of the fiscal and monetary factors influencing it. The $41 seems to me feels, I trust my gut. I always say, to me that, and it feels like in my gut that based on your statistical analysis, what you've done, and also the fundamental factors, that just feels right.
Yeah. The technical term that we use in the data science community is spider sense.
Yeah.
For those who grew up reading Spider-Man, it's actually his Spidey sense. So we have to consult. Our predictions are nothing. We have to ask.
It's nothing. I know, I hope everyone trusts my. Okay.
$41.
I can't read this down here. Okay, it says my sources say yes.
Yes, we were. There you go, Ron.
So we can trust the old 8-ball. We're in good shape, guys. We are going to have $41 silver and $2,653 of gold on March 15th of 2025. Don, let's talk. Do you have a few minutes to talk about what's kind of going on out there in the silver and gold world?
Before you do that, you have to write those next to on your box, next to your bears and everything, so people know what our target is.
What our target? Yeah, we'll have to get a new.
Have to put you on the spot, Ron.
The only thing that here, let me zoom out here. The only thing that this bear cares about is 2,500 gold, because that's when his blindfold comes off. And of course, the silver bear there, $85 silver, and the platinum bear, $2,500 silver. And hey, while I got this up, I just want to say thank you to channel sponsor. What? Wrong hand. First Mining Gold. First Mining Gold is a gold development company with 2 multi-million ounce projects in Canada. I'm speaking with Keith Neumeyer tomorrow. He's the founder and chairman, not the CEO. The CEO of First Mining Gold is Dan Wilton, but Keith Neumeyer founded this company years ago with some of the largest gold projects in Canada. So it'll be interesting. If you want to learn more about First Mining Gold, my hands are screwed up. You can go to their website, firstmininggold.com. And of course, Fortuna Silver. They are a gold and silver producing mining company with 5 operating mines. They have a Latin America operation, and they also have a West African operation, which is growing from a gold mining perspective at a very fast rate. You can learn more about Fortuna Silver at fortunasilver.com. Now, back to us, Don.
Well, hey, you know what, though, is if the $2,653 comes to pass, that Blindfold's coming off the bears between now and next month or next
Absolutely. Year. Right. The silver bear, where is he? Oh boy, my hands. There he is, right there.
We got a mirror image on our video.
Maybe next year, but hey, you never know, right? Is today April Fool's Day, Don?
Yes, it is. Today is April Fool's Day.
Let's go out. I'm going to run out real quick and take a look now that we're live here. Let's go live and see what the gold price is doing. Oh boy. Yep. We're down $1.46 and silver's down. It feels like April Fool's Day. I mean, last night gold was up huge. This morning it was, up $10 and then it was up 20. And now we're down $1.46. I like to say that those of us who invest in the precious metals, and of course, silver's dropped a little bit after being up, 20 cents per ounce or more, that we've developed. We can deal with almost anything as we deal with these crazy price swings. Last month was an all-time monthly close in gold. It was also, I believe, an all-time high quarterly close in gold. And it happened on big volume, but these big moves, one of the basement dwellers, Tim Zub, texted me this morning. He was like, I guess we need to get used to $40 moves in the gold price. What's next? $100 moves. And it, feels like to me a lot of times that these big erratic moves come before big moves, and typically, how do I say this, that these erratic behavior is common before we have some big moves up. Any thoughts on that, Don?
I've been watching those prices for a decade now, and the only thing that I've noticed over the years is, like you said, is you get these erratic moves, but every time it starts going up, my conspiratorial mind kicks in, and I'm like, they're gonna beat that thing down a bit. So I'm just waiting for the second. I guess it's like the abused. I've been subject to so much abuse over the decades watching that price that I'm just waiting for that second shoe to fall. I keep seeing that thing at 2,200, and I'm like, it's going to fall to nothing tomorrow,
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, because I was getting a bunch of texts last night. Jake from Jake's Custom Parts, some of the other basement dwellers, like, gold's up. And I was very happy about that. And I love getting those texts. But I was like, do you think, and everybody kind of jokes around, like, do you think they can slam it down by tomorrow morning? And sure enough, they did slam it down. But what I want to reinforce for myself and for the basement dweller community as well is that we could actually at some point have a sustained bull market. Like, we could actually have, and really in gold, things have been going pretty well, but with silver as well, like like you said, Don, it's like we've been abused for so long.
But that being said, Ron, I'm from Cleveland.
Yeah.
And we've got the Cleveland Browns. So there is nothing that they can do to me that's going to be worse than what the Cleveland Browns do to me. So,
right. Yeah.
I'm used to this.
Yeah.
But the thing is, again, it's going to sound like I should probably put on a tinfoil hat. But let's assume that the price is adjusted by banks or whomever, Comex. I think that there was a concerted effort to keep that number, not allowing it to get above 2,200. And it seemed like every time it kept flirting with it, 2,190, and then down and up. And all of a sudden, one day I log in and I'm like, wow, it's 2,230. It seems like the powers that be did not succeed. Boy, I sound like a conspiratorial here. But okay, let's.
No, Don, let me throw this in. Trust me, that is you do not sound like a conspiracy theorist. Like, you're not presenting that in a way that it's that eludes to the fact that you're not saying anything that that many people aren't saying. That yes, the price of silver, I mean, it's been proven in the court of law that the price of silver and gold have been manipulated. If you think about it, I mean, and this is crazy, and kind of the big picture, I think, that a lot of people miss, and I really believe we're seeing it with gold. The world is moving away from, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's not an instantaneous change, but the world is transitioning away from the dollar. And look, I'm an American, you're an American. It's not necessarily good for us, right? I mean,
if we can continue to print money and send it overseas and they send us oil, hey, I'm all in on that.
Yeah.
But I just don't see it happening forever. I mean, at some point, point, they're going to stop wanting to take our green paper.
Yeah. Well, let me, boy, now everybody stay with us, because this is groundbreaking information. But I mean, Don, if you imagine that if the whole world is just a village of 20 people, okay, you live there, I live there, this most important person, I forgot to say thank you to all the basement dwellers who are here in the village with us today. It's a village of 350 people like we have on this live stream right now. But we'll just say it's a village of 20 people. And that's the whole world, okay? And one guy's a baker, one guy's a doctor, one guy's a carpenter, whatever. Everybody has a different job, and there's just one guy in that village that kind of outsourced a lot of his manufacturing, and he's always borrowing from everybody. But he's also the bully, right? He's the biggest guy and the strongest guy, and he's got the best body armor and everything else. I use that analogy for the United States, and I hate to say this about my own country, but we've kind of been a bully and a borrower for the last like 30, 40 years. And at some point, the world says no more, right? Like, we don't want to play this game anymore. It's like we've been on a credit card binge. And at the end of the day, it just can't go on forever. At some point, the BRICS countries, right? Saudi Arabia, China, all those countries say, you know what? They're kind of like American Express, where like, oh, you have an unlimited credit limit, but you really don't, right? Like, at some point they're going to say no more. And are we at that point? And a lot of people say that's what's going on, and that's leading to this conversion of, and again, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's happening, this conversion of dollars into gold. Because, and then I promise I'll be quiet, Don.
No.
But the reality is, they may not want to be in the dollar as much, right? Because if you're a country, that if you're one of those 20 people in that village, and this guy keeps borrowing from you, and he's kind of a bully, and you say, you know what, this guy owes me so much, he's never going to be able to pay me back. But the other critical thing to remember is that these countries, they may not want to be in the dollar, but they don't really want to be in each other's currencies either, because they don't trust each other as much as well. So where do they go? Gold, real assets?
That's my thinking as well, is at some point fiat currencies tend to devalue over time. And so everything you say is nothing that I haven't thought of before. Maybe not as eloquent as you, but I've always thought that same, I'm on that same mindset, and I have a feeling all the basement dwellers and people
wait, stop, Don. I'm going to stop the live stream right now. I have to say, I have never in 2 years been referred to as eloquent. So boy, you're going to be a returning guest. Eloquent. A lot of other words have been used to describe Ron's basement, but eloquent is a new one. Thank you.
I have my moments.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it feels like it's just the reality of the situation. The reality as to
Mhm.
how things are playing out right now.
But yeah, again, Ron, I'm on your side as well, and I'm always rooting for America. This is where I was born and raised, and I love America. But I'm just looking at some of our financial decisions that we're making, and it doesn't seem like this is a prudent way to go. So
Yeah,
that's, you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. Well, when you talk about silver and gold, I think the other key thing to remember is the world is doing that, right? That's why we know this, obviously,
mhm,
why the central banks are buying gold. Um, the other exciting prospect we have as silver and gold investors is that the retail demand, Western even investment demand for silver and gold have been really subdued over the last couple of years.
mhm,
If our cohort Americans start to wake up, um, and we don't really even need that to happen in mass. I mean, it can be just a small fraction. I mean, we are such a small fraction, Don. Like,
yeah,
the 300 people that are here right now, and me and you, are representative of of the entire population. Who knows what we are? Maybe 0.5%. I mean, in terms of people who
mhm,
are investing in metals, that as people start to wake up a little bit, when people start to wake up that inflation's not really going to go away, right? And when you look at what we just talked about with the world, kind of de-dollarizing. I mean, Goldman Sachs talks about
mhm.
de-dollarizing. JP Morgan Chase talks about it's okay for Ron and Don to say the world is changing, this de-dollarization. Okay, thank you, Susie. I need to do the dinger here. Susie just yelled at me. We got 145 likes. Um, but inflation is not going away as people move. I mean, Don, does it make sense? Like, as people move away from the dollar, that the dollar becomes less valuable, and that inevitably the only way, if the dollar becomes less valuable, the prices go up, right? Or am I right? You're the
That
statistician.
I'm yeah, but that's more economic theory. I'm just a guy, like you said, you're just a guy with in a basement. I'm a guy in a different basement. But that's the whole thought of behind inflation is too much money chasing too few goods, and if the dollar amount as the amount of dollars grows and there's less stuff to buy with it, the dollar has to become less valuable.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think an easy way for us to think about it is if I have a pile of this stuff sitting here, right? Silver here. Here's an American silver eagle. If I got a big pile, if I had all the silver in the world, right, piled up in my
Mhm,
basement, all of it, it's limited, it's finite, right?
mhm.
And
Yeah,
but if I have, hold on a second.
you have to go dig more of that out of the dirt. But
Yeah,
this we could print
this
this stuff.
and if I had all the silver, Don, piled up in my basement, and I had all of these somehow all showed up piled up, it'd probably go into my yard, right? But anyway, you could double these very easily. I mean, they
Mhm.
have, right, over what, the
Yeah,
last 6 years. You can double the amount of this stuff, or quadruple, or go up by 10. You can't do that with this. You can't, right? it,
somebody has to go with a shovel and dig that stuff out of the dirt and then refine it. There's work and effort behind that, so it has an automatic uh, scarcity built in. It doesn't just magically show up like I'm going to show my age here, but I Dream of Jeannie, where she would just blink her eyes and then the stuff would just show up. It doesn't work that way. Somebody has to go and do some work. They have to find the stuff, dig it up, refine it. There is an automatic scarcity built into this. Whereas now, heck, we don't even print the dollars. They just
yeah.
push a button and it shows up magically in electronic bits and bytes.
Yeah, yeah. So when you compare the paper to that, to me, there's no comparison. The other thing that we can we talk about the world de-dollarizing. That's happening in conjunction with a fiscal situation in the United States, which is untenable, right? I mean, on top of the fact that the world is kind of saying, here's your dollars back, or they're not using, and I don't want to overemphasize, right? Like this is not like this is a long-term process that's going on, but it is going on. But on top of that, we're in this fiscal situation where you're a statistician. I'm an old accountant. I'm not actively practice accounting, but I understand numbers really well, accounting and debt and interest rates. And what's going on is that we are in a very untenable situation fiscally in this country. That's happening. It's like a double whammy, Don. Okay, then correct me if you think I'm wrong, but we'll call it the double whammy, where you've got the world wanting to move away from the dollar for a variety of reasons, including the weaponization of the dollar, but at the same time, the world's wanting to move away from the dollar because of this fiscally untenable, unmanageable, the skyrocketing national debt, the future obligations, all that. The world's moving away from the dollar at the same time that the United States needs to borrow more from the world than any other time in history. Is that?
I couldn't have said it better myself. That's why I'm just a little concerned with where the finances of this country are going at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. We got a few more minutes to share with us, Don. Thank you.
As much time as you need.
And for all you that have just joined us, don't forget, if you're just joining now, go back and watch the replay, because Don from DKW Analytics, right? He's a data scientist. He's a professor at Northwestern University. Is that accurate to say? Yes. One of the most prestigious universities in the world, the United States, very highly respected. Did a lot of data science work, and he came up with. I kind of helped the team.
It was a team effort, right?
I don't know about that, but anyway, we have big predictions for what the silver and gold price will be in March 15th. I was listening to a podcast last night by a guy named Jordan Roy Byrne, very smart guy. He was talking with Vince Lanci. I always mess up Vince's last name. Vince has been in the basement before for an interview. I want to run over a couple things that I found fascinating that they were talking about. About the mainstream media is starting to talk about gold. It is silver next, because they're not talking about silver at all, but the mainstream media is starting to talk about gold. And it's been a long time since they talked about either. They talked about, I thought this was interesting, the prospect that there's going to be new products coming out that are going to help facilitate the ability for the average person to invest in gold and silver, to deal with what they could see as potential oncoming demand. This is interesting. The World Bank recently put out a handbook for asset managers on how to invest in gold. Any thoughts on any of that? Are you picking up on that, Don, that we're getting more notice in the mainstream media for gold?
I'm starting to hear little bits, but I've thought that similar things, that I thought that gold and silver are never going to really achieve their true value until it starts getting airplay in the mainstream media. It's kind of like, I couldn't turn on the TV without hearing about Bitcoin, and it was always Bitcoin. And I thought, well, gosh, it almost is an echo chamber, and it just keeps driving it up. And then I thought, well, I wonder what happens when they start talking about gold and silver. And now that gold is starting to reach all-time highs here, I'm still not hearing as much as I would have expected, but I am starting to hear people mention it a little bit here and there. So at some point, I harken back to when I was in high school back in the 1980s, when gold was, it went from 200 to 300 to 500, and it was just all over the news. And it just, this euphoric bubble occurred, and then it got really high, and then, began to go down. So I think you're going to definitely need some kind of news reporting on this before the average person. Like, again, looking at the data from before, the people on the street, when I would talk to people in the grocery store or whatever, they didn't even know what the price of gold or silver was.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was in high school, everybody knew it because it was all over the news. So I think you do need some kind of a news report.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Wherever
need.
people get their news nowadays, I don't know, but it has to. They're going to have to see it in every day before it starts to get any sort of traction.
Yeah, and Susie watches the Today Show every morning. I guess that'll be a good indicator when I hear them leading off with a story about gold or, God forbid, silver. That we'll know that we're getting some real traction. There's a guy named Ross Beatty, who's a legend in the gold and silver mining sector. Super high quality guy. He's currently the chairman and founder of Equinox Gold. And Ross is just, he doesn't give a lot of interviews. Maybe seems like once every couple of months, but he's a guy that everybody has a great deal of respect for. And Ross says that the time to sell silver or the time to sell gold is when all the ducks are quacking. When everybody, I like to say if I go to Thanksgiving dinner and all my relatives who never really care about silver gold, or if I go to the neighborhood pool, right? I'll tell you what, Don, my neighborhood that I live in, we got this really great neighborhood pool. It's been there for like 50 years. It's like the neighborhood watering hole, it's kind of like, it's really great because it brings people together. But I like to use this story. Some people find it funny. I think it's funny that if one of my neighbors comes up to me and I don't really want to engage in conversation with them, all I have to do is start talking about silver and gold, and they tend to skedaddle. They tend to swim to a different part of the pool. So I guess when there's a crowd of people around me at the neighborhood pool seeking advice and counsel on gold, I'll know that maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to go. Oh shoot! I had something really great that I wanted to bring up as you were talking. I should have written it down. I want to go back to something you said earlier about silver. Where's the silver eagle? I don't know why. I love to show this that came from Jake. Jake's, is that a good in focus?
Oh yeah, I can see it.
You mentioned, right, all the energy that went into this thing is still there. There's another famous YouTuber named Bald Guy Money, who's a friend of mine, super smart guy. Love Bald Guy. Roger is awesome. Okay.
I got my hair cut just because I'm a fan of his show too.
I know you secretly like Bald Guy more than me, but nonetheless, Bald Guy, he and I we do videos together once in a while. He brought up this point. He was like, Ron, that's a battery, right? We think of batteries like that store energy, but he said, and if I'm slaughtering this, I apologize to Bald Guy, but basically what he said, it's a battery that stores value. And isn't it so true? I mean, this silver that's in this 1 ounce American Silver Eagle, it could have been mined 1,800 years ago. But it's held that value. It's stored that value for all those years. I mean, it just blows me away.
It's not a store of value. It's a store of work. Somebody had to dig that thing out of the dirt and refine it and turn it into a silver eagle. That thing is it's like it is a statement that somebody did some work, and then therefore, if you are a farmer and you grow something and you now have that silver eagle, that is some way of saying, look, I am a farmer and I produce something. I did some work, and this thing is holding the value of that work. Because that's really the money is nothing more than a tool. It allows us to store our work and use it at a later time. If I have to sell my crops or my tomatoes instantly because they're going to rot tomorrow, I'm going to get stuff that I don't want because I have to sell them now. So that's the whole purpose of some kind of tool. That's money. It has to hold value.
Yeah. Right. And that's probably why silver as I understand it, was used as money even
Mhm.
before gold as well. You know, the other interesting thing that to consider as we look at, I mean, what a ripoff, right? Like this, what a ripoff, because because especially for the middle and lower middle class people, and that this has not just gone on in the United States currently,
Mhm.
probably gone on for a couple thousand years, where you have paper money systems that kind of crop up, right? I mean, to me, gold and silver are always the base of the money system. I'm a big subscriber to Exter's pyramid. Are you familiar with
Mhm.
Exter's
I
pyramid? Right.
am.
Yeah, and that those are the real forms of money. I mean, and they're real, right? They're tangible. They always have been. I like to think they always will be, and that everything above that is synthetic, right?
Mhm.
Man-made. Paper money is man-made. But to think that this, I mean, it's really. I don't want to be. I always feel guilty when I say this stuff because I feel like I'm like being. But our founding fathers stood for silver and gold, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
That the paper money, I mean, we live in a system where, under the best case scenario, the Federal Reserve is saying we want to steal 2% of your money with inflation, right? I mean, because your
Mhm.
average lower middle class person who doesn't have a high yield checking account, or doesn't have a stock portfolio, or doesn't have, they work for this stuff,
Mhm.
and it's constantly deflated. I mean, Larry Summers, who was the 71st Treasury Secretary of the United States, recently came public and said basically that the inflation rate in, I think it was 2022, so just 2 years ago,
Mhm.
was really more like 18%. If you use the same calculation that you would have used in the 80s, I mean, it to me, uh, uh, it's more of a reason for people to consider owning precious metals. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know. Do you want to own stocks? Do you want to own? I mean, real estate it's great. My house has quote unquote gone up in value. Yours probably has as well. But I don't want to run out and buy another house right now. Not at these prices. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, to me, a good case for investing in precious metals.
Well, yeah, and it's like you said about and again, I'm not an economist here, but I do know that they've adjusted the inflation numbers, and I mean, it's kind of like going to the doctor. It's like I want to lose weight, so they set the scale back a little bit, and they said, "Hey, look, Don, you lost 20 pounds." Well, I didn't really lose 20 pounds. I just, if you just move the scale back a bit, but uh, you're right. And then the other thing that I'm thinking about is that when they took us off the gold standard, what was it, August 15, I think it was 1971, and it was supposed to be temporary. And here we are 50 plus years later, and it's still not on it. All we have is that green paper that they can print anytime they want. And you got to wonder at what point does, as you were saying earlier, it's people are around the world are beginning to be a little bit reluctant to take our money.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, and there's that statistic too that's crazy, that I've now seen in several different sources, that I think since 1970, the U.S. dollar has lost, and I've heard 98%. I've also heard 99% of its value versus gold. So that's crazy, right? I
Mhm.
mean, that is just. Oh, I know what I want to talk about, Don. This is big. This is
Okay.
big. This will be guys. Stay with us, because Don and I are going to talk about something big. When we talk about the 70s, I knew I had it right. When we talk
Okay.
about the 70s, right, the silver price, I think in early 1970 was like $1.50. In 1980, it hit what, $51,
Mhm.
$50 per ounce in nominal terms. Again, in today's dollars, that'd be like 160, but we're going to leave that alone.
Mhm.
Gold also went up, I don't know, 15
Yeah,
times.
went from like $32 up to 800.
And I know things are different now, okay, right? Things are
Mhm.
different in this modern age in which we live. It's, 50 years later, let's say. But I would almost argue, Don, yes, things are different, but from a fiscal perspective, the national debt, the deficits that we're running, everything else, that things are different indeed. but that they're more exaggerated to the bad side. Like geopolitically, I think, part of what went on in the 70s is we kind of set up the petrodollar. I think that officially happened in 1974. Like fiscally, the debt level in this country has become so much worse. Geopolitically, right? We're in the process of the petrodollar being unwound to a certain degree. I think you could even argue that socially, things are, I know the 70s were a little crazy after the Vietnam War, so maybe socially not as extreme, worse. But there was one more as well, one other component that I wanted to throw in there. But just overall, that we're in a situation now, like gold and silver did very well in the 70s, but it's like when you compare things now to the way things were in the 70s, things seem to be more badder. Does that, politically, I remember, then I'm going to shut up, Don. Politically, you could argue that things are even right. Politically in the United States, I mean, we had a contested election the last time we had a presidential election. Who knows what's going to play out this time? So politically, socially, fiscally, geopolitically, are things crazier now, Don, or am I crazy? I know I'm eloquent.
I don't want to look like I wear a tinfoil hat, but let's just say everything you said doesn't sound crazy to me.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you, Ron.
I keep visualizing you with a tinfoil hat. Well, you're probably thinking Ron brought me on here, and I'm
no. I enjoy the conversation. I'm just I think that basically it's not just me. I think all of the people who watch your show, we tend to have the same mindset that you look out there and it doesn't look like things are going as well as they were when I was younger. It just looks like there's more contention.
But do you think that's real, Don? Or do you think that's just because we're becoming older men and we're more cynical, right? Because I'm 54, and so I was born in 1970. I mean, to me, the 1970s were a la land, right? Like, I was 10 years old in 1980. I kind of briefly remember the gold and silver being talked about, unless I'm dreaming that up. I definitely remember being 1 year old and my mom having the TV on and Nixon taking us off the gold standard. She says, okay, Susie's yelling at me. And do what? The 10 pings and what? Okay, I will. I got to ring the bell. I forgot. But I remember my mom said I cried for 3 days. But is it real?
Wow.
No, I'm just. What are you doing, Nixon? Is it real, or do you think, or?
I think. Look, I'm a little older than you. I'm pushing 59, and yeah, maybe we're just two old curmudgeons here, but it just seems like you're right. The world seems more contentious than it does back when we were younger. It just seems like
a
lot more conflict internally and externally,
and fiscally in terms of how it's
fiscally, everything across the board. And so to me, it would seem like this would be prime time for the precious metals and other things of value to go up, but yet they're not. So that's, hence our conspiratorial mindset of someone's holding it down. Maybe you're right. Maybe things are just rosy and we're just, paranoid. But
yeah. Well, and right. Maybe things are different this time. I want to say this. You talked about the basement dweller community. The people that watch this channel are smart. That's one thing that
and good looking too.
Smart and good looking. Yes, Don's talking to you. Boy, Don, I'm eloquent and the audience is good looking. No wonder everybody loves you so well. But they are very smart, right? Like these are people who want to dig in a little bit and learn what's really going on. And I think when we do that, when we learn what's really going on, it can be a little scary. But I have a tradition here, Don, where I ring a bell every time we get to 100 thumbs up, and I failed miserably on that today because I was so engaged with you. This is an American Silver Eagle. This is called a pocket pinger. Have you ever heard of this?
I have.
Yeah. So I'm going to ping it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm no statistician, but I can count to 10, right? And let's ring the cowbell because we got the 200 thumbs up. Don, it's been great. I mean, I really want to say thank you for joining us today. Obviously, you're a super smart guy. Our viewers here in the basement are super smart. So I know they really enjoyed, having you here in the basement and discussing not just this data science approach to looking at the silver and gold price, but also kind of your input on these other subject matters as well. Can we have you back on again in a month?
Whenever you want, Ron. I'm easy as Sunday morning.
Okay. Well, whenever you get fired up about something, Don, and you think, you know what, I want to talk about that, and you feel passionately, I want to give you an open invitation to come back to the basement at your leisure, at your leisure, especially.
I think your ratings would plummet here. I think as long as we're talking statistics, I think I can hold my own on that.
I think you're underselling yourself, and I want to repeat one more time. You did refer to me as eloquent, so you can invite it back twice for that one.
Well, there you go.
No, on behalf of everybody, I want to say thank you to the moderators who've been here today helping out as well. This channel is not possible without the hard work of Susie and the moderators. And I want to wish everyone out there to have a great day. If you haven't given this a thumbs up, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe to the channel, we put out new content pretty much every day, something about silver and gold. Most important, be nice to yourself. And Don, thanks again. And we will see you soon.
You take care. Thank you so much for having me, Ron. I'm a big fan of the show.